Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. 11 after 9 o'clock, and we are now joined by Brother Tahir Maepa. He's a board member of Stichting, Steinhoff International Compensation Claims. He's also going to be talking to us about two other matters. The first one is unpacking the recently released quarterly layout force survey. And then we're going to look at the Pakistani businessman sentenced to 2 life terms and 6 years in prison. He is Mohammed Sajid Khan, and we're going to touch on the unemployment rate in South Africa. So lots to pack in the next 20 minutes or so. So let us get cracking. Assalamu alaikum, Tahir.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you doing?
With your du'as, alhamdulillah. Okay, let's start. You do know we're going to be cramming a lot in the time we have, all very important issues. Do you want to unpack the recently released quarterly layout force survey?
Yes. Look, there's a couple of things that this survey is dealing with, and there's a lot of contradictions as far as I'm concerned. Yesterday, when I read the commentators in the media and all that, everybody seems to be in a jovial mood to say that we may be getting out of the woods, the employment levels have increased and all that. But unfortunately, the reality is these are mere artificial growth. It's not real growth of employment. If you look at the the first quarter of 2022, it was driven by a number of factors. And one of those factors is the fact that the relaxation of the COVID regulations meant that more businesses who sort of laid off employees managed to bring some of those employees in their employment. Now, there's another element to this aspect. Because of the issue of casualization is so big in South Africa, some of these employees were never recorded as employees who were retrenched during the COVID period. So these employers, all that they did, they just said, look, there's a lockdown, go and sit at home. Once the lockdown restrictions have been, will bring you back. Now, these are the missing middle that were never calculated as employees who lost their jobs and then they were retrenched and all that. So this is basically the COVID regulation relaxation outcomes. It's not real jobs that have been created in the first quarter of 2022.
So the picture is more grim than it actually suggests, if you really unpack it as you have done. Are you concerned about the way forward? I mean, we're sitting with unemployment rates of 34.5. Realistically, what you're suggesting is that it might be in the 40%. How's that going to impact on the economy? And food insecurity, not even looking at the issue around what the petrol price hike is going to further impact on the economy and the people.
Yes, look, the situation is grim and it's not getting better. If you look also in terms of the statistics, the growth sectors that are supposed to be the drivers of our economy, which is agriculture and construction, and obviously government, even though they've sort of claimed that it's not their role to create jobs, private sector is supposed to. Those sectors have dropped. Now, being a developmental state where there's a need for infrastructure development, if we are not growing in the construction sector, that in itself it tells you a story. And the question is why? Why are we not growing in those sectors, including agriculture? And the agricultural sector touches on what you just said now about food security. That in itself, remember, food security goes beyond the ability to actually buy food itself. Food security is about being able to access food when you need it. And slowly we're reaching to a point where we will have money, but there wouldn't be enough food for us to be able to access. So that in itself, it's a serious concern. Now, there's also another aspect that is part of these statistics. They're talking about the growth in the public service apparatus. Now, what kind of jobs are we talking about in the public service? Public service is not creating real jobs. They are creating these so-called public works extended programs. Those are not jobs. Those are political gimmicks that are played by the ruling party just to get the vote of the vulnerable portion of our society, where they give them stipends to go around picking up rubbish on the road, and insignificant. It's not sustainable jobs. They are not even supposed to be calculated as jobs. But because of we are so desperate for good news, we sort of throw everything into these statistics so that people can have hope. But these are false hopes. Our government has really ran out of ideas in terms of how we can get ourselves out of this particular situation. And to a large extent, I agree with what President Ramaphosa said, that look, the driver behind job creation is supposed to be private sector. But private sector has lost hope in the public service. They've lost hope in the political decorum of our country. So nobody wants to put their money down and create jobs and create businesses, because of we are run by corrupt elites who are not stopping. I mean, these people are on a rampage. So people who want to make money in a proper fashion without going through the corruption route, unfortunately, they are restricted. And because of those restrictions, they are holding their money and they are not creating possibilities of manufacturing sector, agricultural sector, which agricultural sector, this is one of the most concerning areas of our country, that we are dropping at a very high speed, which will drive the price of food. It will drive the affordability levels. And these statistics also, they show us that the household income has also dropped. Now, if household income has dropped, which is driven by employment, then it tells you that these statistics cannot be accurate, because if more jobs have been created, household income has dropped, it doesn't tally. There's something amiss there. So as far as I'm concerned, these are artificial statistics that are not real, and we should not be excited about them.
Okay, so what is it that we do as far as civil society, NGOs, NPOs? Something needs to be done to break this vicious cycle that we're in. We're sitting with unacceptable high unemployment rates. We're looking at not only food security, we're going to be looking at a situation of food scarcity. Can you
Yes,
imagine what that is going to create? That
yes,
is going to create an uprising in the country.
yes,
Um, Government is saying that it's not their role to create jobs. We have elected them in. It is, they need to be working with private sector to create employment. They're not creating jobs because they looting all the money. So there's no money for a civil society. There's no money for the masses in the country.
mm,
These are issues that needs to be addressed. How do people like Tahir Maepa, maybe, I'm not even sure if we can rely on the unions, the trade unions, and then civil society. How do we band together to break this impasse? Something needs to give, and it needs to give now. Otherwise, we're going to be in serious trouble.
absolutely. 100%. You are on point. We're in serious dilemma that requires a different approach. You see, the problem that we have done is that we have become a society of complainants. We complain too much and we are not doing anything in order
Absolutely.
to address some of our challenges. And we tend to forget that the power is with the people. There's no
Absolutely.
political party, there's no government that is more powerful by the people. And the young people, and this is the message that I always drive to say, that young people, affluent young people, educated young people, they should not run away from politics. We have left politics to fools. We have left politics to morons, and that is why we are being run by these idiots. And it is our fault. It is us who have made this situation dire because of we elected people who can't count from 1 to 10, and we blame them why they can't perform. They can't perform because of they are not capable of performing. So what needs to happen is that as a society we need to start saying we are not going to go around burning buildings, burning our infrastructure, and protesting on the road. We need to change this government. This government has
And
failed us.
I need to come in here and really stress on that point is when civil society, rises up, obviously in protest against all of these issues in the country. The one very important issue we need to get through to our young people is do not destroy infrastructure, because you and I, as taxpayers, we have a very small tax base. We then end up putting that bill, and then there just is not enough money to go around to fix the infrastructure. How do we get those very important messages across to the youth to say, yes, it's your right to protest, but do not destroy the infrastructure because you're disadvantaging yourself?
Absolutely, and this is some of the work that we are doing, and one of the reasons why we have established the Public Service and Commercial Union of South Africa is for the very same reason, because most of our union, our traditional union, COSATU in particular, which is an alliance partner to the ANC, they are part of the elite. They are not there to really drive transformation and hold anybody accountable. They are just there to create spaces for their leaders to also come into government so that the perpetuation of looting and maladministration and corruption should continue. So we need to start filling those spaces. And young people and us as adults, we should not allow young people to run their own struggle without us being chief advisors to our young people. Yes, we need to direct their anger towards where it's supposed to go, but the manner in which they're doing it, it's disadvantaging them, and it's in fact advantaging the very same people that we are saying they are not performing and they are not doing justice to us. So there needs to be a lot of education. We as parents, we cannot say that we were active in the 60s, we were active in the 70s and 80s. Now it's time for us to relax. We can't relax. We need to make sure that we drive this agenda, especially among the youth, so that they can know how to be able to topple a government without being violent, because of it's our democratic right to elect people who will do right by us. And this government has failed tenfold. There's no way we can give them another chance.
Okay, undoubtedly, people like yourself and other leaders within our communities are working closely together, um, are brainstorming how we move forward and how we take our young leaders forward sooner rather than later. I presume it's
Absolutely.
happening. It's happening.
Absolutely. In fact, as I'm speaking to you, we've got 100 young people that we are training in our offices today. And one of the things that we are training them on is also being responsible activists. Because of it
Absolutely.
doesn't help to be an activist and then you are misdirected. You are like unguided missile. You're going to hurt yourself. So if we can be able to say to them, look, this is the situation, and we are truthful. We are not driving a particular agenda. I'm not pro any political party. However, I can speak about this government because of they are running us. I cannot speak about opposition because of they are not the ones who are in government. They are not the ones who are stealing from us. But as it stands now, we need to prepare a new breed of leadership who are going to take us forward. And if we don't prepare them properly, they are going to be swallowed by the very system that we are trying to dismantle.
Do you think the current government is going to allow the new leadership to come through, or in the process corrupt them as well?
Well, we are not going to ask permission for that. Those days are over. I grew up within the ANC. I love the ANC, and I've got a lot of leaders in the ANC that I respect. However, ANC is polarized by wrong people, and they're in charge. So as far as I'm concerned, ANC as a government, it's time for them to retire. Let's bring in, and we are going to do it. We are not going to ask for permission for that. It is our democratic right, and this is our country. We are going to fix it by hook or crook.
Okay, just before we move over to Mohammed Sajid Khan's conviction, let me ask you this final question. What are your thoughts on rapid economic transformation? There are other political leaders and activists that suggest that that's the wrong trajectory to be going on.
You see, the problem is that, people come up with these terms in order to incite the vulnerable and the poorest of the poor because they know that our people are desperate. When you say radical economic transformation, exactly what are you saying? What are you saying? You cannot talk radical economic transformation unless if you have a plan in terms of taking everybody along. Remember that we off a period where we must continue with adversarial relationship between business and the people. We need ethics. We need ethical conduct on both sides. And what we need to do, we need to hold our government responsible as much as private sector. I mean, for instance, our banks, these are criminals in suits. The banks have made more damage to our country more than the government, as far as I'm concerned. Because for you to run all these scams of moving money outside of the country, you need the banks. And they participated, and nobody is willing to take on the banks because of everybody's afraid of the banks. But this kind of transformation, it must be two-folded. It cannot only be channeled at the emotions of our people and promise them a manna from heaven. It's not going to work.
Okay, the issue around the banks, I'd like to reserve that for another discussion. I think lots needs to be uncovered on that matter. Let's move to Mohammed Sajid Khan. He was convicted on 2 counts of murder and attempted murder. Your thoughts on the sentencing, and can you give us a bit of context to this case, please? Because we do know you've been following it very carefully.
Yes, Julie, this is one of the saddest things that I've participated in because here we're talking about Muslims. This is the sad part. It's really disheartening for me as a Muslim to see another Muslim taking a life of another Muslim for whatever reason. Look, I don't even want to go into details in terms of whether it was justifiable or it was not. But we know better. We've been taught by the best human being that ever walked the face of this earth. And yet we are failing on simple fundamentals. Taking out a gun and shooting somebody who's not armed is not justifiable. Even if you felt that you were threatened, but this person didn't have a weapon. Now we're having a situation where a human being, a Muslim, is dead, and we have another Muslim who's going for 2 life sentences, leaving his family, his children behind because of this stupidity. Really, I really don't know what to say. It's really disheartening, and it's a sad situation for me. But insofar as justice, there's nothing that can justify the taking of life. And obviously, me as a Muslim, I would have wanted Mr. Sajid Khan to also lose his life because of that is the principle of justice in Islam. But we are in a democratic country and the law has taken its course. And I'm glad that our courts really rose to the occasion. But none of this will justify what has happened.
Obviously. Very quickly, let's look at the issue around. We have a lot of foreign nationals in the country. Uh, Mr. Sajid Khan being one of those in question. We have Nigerian, Somalians, foreign nationals from all over Africa
Yes.
and the East and the Middle East. But, with them come along some negative elements as well. And then you hear of the different mafias in operation in the country. We know some of them have been linked with the recent spate of kidnappings, some of
Yes.
them involved in the drug and the human trade. What are your thoughts on it? And seeing that you are an activist, do you think that we need to start looking at those areas as well in fixing our country, protecting It is Child Protection Week as well, protecting our vulnerable children in growing up in such a degraded community and societies.
Yes, it is unfortunately said that because of a handful of rogues, animal like human beings, all foreign nationals will have to bear the brunt, unfortunately. Now, let's look at the element of migration. Migration is something that no country can avoid. Migration will always be there, and it will, in fact, we need to encourage migration. The question is how? We cannot have a situation where we have so many undocumented migrants in the country. We can't. There's no country that can operate under those circumstances, because at the end of the day, we don't know who these people are, what they are capable of, why they are here, what they are doing here. And most problematic is that when these crimes start happening in the country, it's almost impossible to be able to get hold of these people. But again, it is because of the failure of our government. We have laws that says that for you to enter this country, there's a proper process of being able to do that. The other day, I met with the Minister of Home Affairs, and one of the things that I said to him is that I'm going to support him in his drive to try and get all illegal immigrants out of this country. And I'm not missing my words, because you are breaking our law. You are breaking our country's law. And if you are not going to respect our laws, then you don't respect us. As foreigners, all foreigners, whether from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Somalia, or they are welcome in this country, but enter through proper means. If you enter through illegal means, you are just a common criminal, and we cannot allow it. And I'm not talking about things like, no, they're taking our jobs. I'm talking fundamentals here. I'm talking principles here. The respect of the rule of law. South Africa is not a banana republic. Majority of these people, they come from countries where governance has already collapsed. So for them to come in a structured environment, it's very difficult. They want to live like, I mean, I love going to Mayfair, for instance, and Fortsburg, because I love the environment, the food there. But I'm looking at these people, the manner in which they live, the manner in which they drive, they are filthy. They throw everything all over the place. It's just a mess. We can't allow those kinds of things. And especially when you are a Muslim, when we know that cleanliness is part of our religion, but we live under horrific conditions because of them. This is not their country. They don't care what happens to us. And I'm saying, I agree with those who say all illegal immigrants must leave our country, and we welcome them back if they follow the right procedures to come in back into the country.
Okay, I hear you loudly and clearly, and I agree with you that we can't generalize, and even a lot of the illegal immigrants that are here, they're here out of sheer desperation. As long as they're not involved in criminal activities, human trafficking, drug trafficking, stealing, and just breaking the law. And the other very important aspect that you've touched on is cleanliness. We can't apportion all the blame on them. Let's not generalize, but that's something that we as South Africans need to take cognizance of well. Tahir Maepa, always a pleasure talking to you. Can't wait for our next interview. Inshallah, you go well. Keep us in your du'as.
Jazakallah khair. We must talk about the banks, because this thing of the banks soon. Please arrange that.
We'll do it as early as next week.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, my
Inshallah.
producers are listening to you, so we will put it up. You go well, and as always, assalamu alaikum to you.
Wa alaikum salam. All of the best to Salam Media.
Alhamdulillah. It is 9:35 exactly. News and views right here on Salam Media. Next up is Sumaya Jamal from Penny Appeal.